Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? I don't know how many of you watch the videos or participate in the online forums or go to the Facebook page. Anybody here listen to the radio podcast? We do? Good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, those of you who know that I do the show from a home office know that I kind of talk about the fact, sometimes when I'm hosting the show, at my feet or in my lap, I've got I call it a rat dog. It's a miniature Yorkie. Belongs to Natalie. It's a little 4-pound Yorkie. It's so sweet. And everybody hears me talk about the dog. Everywhere I go, I do a convention, I'm at a thing, I'm at the Reason Rally. Hey, how's the dog? Last night was bath night. And I couldn't help but snap a photograph. Of course, the cat got it too. I also want to thank Will and the folks at the atheist community of Tulsa for their gracious hospitality here at the convention center as well. All the things they've done to make today such a success, including customizing the menu. Really, really good. To have that, that's service. That's knowing your audience. I make light of the stereotypes that atheists so often face. I'll be honest with you. The thinkingatheist.com website went live in 2009. And my head lately has really been hurting from the stereotypes. I get the vibe you are feeling much of the same thing. The comment sections, the long posts, the emails, it's really becoming epidemic, and it's all the same stuff. Recognize the guy on the far right? That is me almost 20 years ago. That's not a mullet, it's a bi-level. I was hosting the morning show, and we were doing a live in-studio shot with the Imperials. There's me with Amy Grant. Wow is right. I did radio for a lot of years, and on both sides of the dial, folks, I remember when I would, and you know this feeling, when you hear a song for the first time, and it's really interesting, right? You hear it for the first time, and you say, hey, that's catchy, different. I really enjoy that. I'd listen to it again. And then the radio station plays the song day after day after week after week until the biggest hits become the biggest shits. You feel me? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you go, oh, click, and you shut off. Don't want to hear that one again. A recent example for me was the song by Adele, Someone Like You, right? Comes on the radio. That's different. Kind of nice. Hadn't heard anything quite like it. And then the Chinese water torture of freaking corporate radio made me hate it. Until finally, the next time it plays, great song, Turn It Up, turns to, Please Kill Me. This is a conditioned response, right? Q102 FM, 75 degrees today, on our way to a high of 92, chance of showers by the weekend. And coming up next, it's Adele, Someone Like You. Click. That's exactly how I feel lately about the broken record arguments that I've been hearing on my website, everywhere else. They were interesting the first few dozen times, but they've been played to death, right? They weren't all that great to begin with. Anybody realize lately, do you feel extra cognizant of the types of things you are hearing over and over and over again that have long been debunked? Q102 FM, 71 degrees today, on our way to a high of 92, chance of showers by the weekend. And coming up next, it's Ken Ham, My Granddaddy Wasn't No Monkey. Click. Followed by evolution. It's just a theory. The God of the gaps. It takes more faith to be an atheist. Teach the controversy. You were never a true Christian to begin with. You took it out of context. I had a personal experience with Jesus. I was on the deathbed. I was lying there on the gurney, and I floated up above my body, and I heard exactly what the doctors were saying, and I know what the nurses in the hallway were saying, and no one else could have told me what they said. And when I came back to my body, I remembered every single thing, word for word, and you can't tell me it didn't happen. Anybody heard a story like that? What do you do with it? Okay. You're better safe than sorry. Pascal's ways, there's little Blaze for you. How did something come from nothing? The eye is too complex to have evolved. Scientist X believes in God, and here's a copy of his book. I suggest you read it. The Bible tells me so. All belief systems deserve respect. America was founded as a Christian nation. Hey, they found Noah's Ark. Again. Hey, there are no atheists in foxholes. If it's not true, how come it's been around for thousands and thousands of years? Ignore the Old Testament, read the New Testament. Where do you get your morals from? With a special bonus track, Hitler. You've killed God because you wish to be gods. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. Darwin had a deathbed conversion, don't you know? There are no transitional fossils. Prove he doesn't exist. Why are you stealing my joke? For someone who doesn't believe in God, you sure talk about him an awful lot. You must be obsessed. Are you obsessed? I think you've got a guilty conscience. Tell me you've heard this one before, and I'm not the only one. And you got to help me out with this one. You may not believe in him, but he... Coming up next on Q102. It is numbing. It is exhausting to see my former faith, which is Christianity, right, constantly being defended with arguments that are not just demonstrably wrong, but they have been long refuted. And everybody who comes at me acts like they're the first person to come up with it. Now, we're in the information age, right? It's become so much easier to get a hold of information. That's probably a common thread I've heard throughout the day today is the internet, the internet, the internet, the internet, the internet. It's absolutely true. You know how I found out that there were opposing opinions, opposing arguments? You realize what cracked the bubble, as Teresa said, for me? I was browsing the internet, found a video by Christopher Hitchens. If it had not been for the internet, I would have never heard someone challenge my God, the Christian God, any God, with such veracity, with such passion, and with such well-defended arguments. I'd have never heard it. Just a few decades ago, information wasn't really held hostage, but it was a hell of a lot harder to get. How many of you graduated in 1990 or before? Raise it high. You got to own that. Own that. For those in the younger demographic who may not know what I'm talking about, I want you to step for just a moment into my way back machine. All right, we're going to go way back. We're going to explore the bleeding edge technology of yesterday. Are you ready? Yes. This, anybody know what this is? This is what cable television looked like in 1984. This state-of-the-art channel changer, hardwired by your cable technician into the wall. Don't worry, folks, there's 30 feet of actual cable. So you can walk around the room and lean into the other room to maybe get the phone. Thanks to this handy-dandy box that sits easily on your lap, you get 3 clickable rows of 12 channels each, a grand total of 36 channels. All at the push of a large plastic button. Unless, of course, you decide not to subscribe to the premium channels. To my knowledge, the Playboy channel was never actually subscribed to because teenage boys would simply stare at the scrambled signal for hours at a time, looking for a few precious seconds of naked human skin. I don't know this personally, it's just what I heard. By the way, even back then, there were many who preferred satellite over cable. Woo! Check that thing out for your backyard. Television just plucked out of the sky. Now, you might be too busy to watch TV, especially with the newfound popularity of the personal computer. This, my friends, is the Radio Shack TRS-80. Own one? Guilty. Anybody own one? Originally released in 1977, this sucker boasts a 12-inch monochrome monitor, cassette storage for loading and saving programs, a lightning-fast processor speed of 1.77 megahertz, and a whopping 4K of RAM. The software options were awesome, including Math 1, Level 1 Basic, and Home Recipe. It is, of course, a portable computer, which is why you can opt for the very convenient plastic carrying case. If still images are your thing, this ought to bring back some memories. Nothing beats the Kodak Instamatic. Just a few decades ago, hugely popular, huge. The Kodak Instamatic featured a fixed focus, a flash range of 4 to 9 feet, a viewfinder that was essentially a tiny hole in the camera with a piece of glass in it. For indoor photography, you could attach the handy Sylvania Flash Cube, which took 4 flash photos on just one cube. It flashed and rotated 90 degrees and flashed. Of course, when you're done, you just drive it to the nearest photomat location. Remember those? That says overnight, 1 day. It used to be like 3 to 7 days, I think, to get your photos back. It boggles the mind today. People were taking photographs in the lobby, and people just look and go, no, I don't like that one. Click, they delete it and go till they're correct, until they're right. You had no idea what you were getting back when the photomat era was underway. Look back just a few decades ago, would you? Think about how quaint our once cherished advancements now feel. Things like cell phones. Anybody ever have one of those? Bag phone? The battery was bigger than the phone. I had one for my truck. It had a big antenna with a magnet that stuck to the roof of the truck and had a cable that you actually had to stick under the window and roll into your cab. It's embarrassing. Portable music on your Sony Walkman. With 45 minutes of music on each side of a cassette tape. Just don't leave them in your dash on a hot summer day, or you'll be totally screwed. By the way, speaking of cassettes, I saw this floating around on the web and I just thought it was funny. It's the age test. Can you make the connection between those two objects? Come on. Just a few decades ago, getting information, it meant running this obstacle course, this weird gauntlet we had to go through. I mean, you could find what you needed if you really were dedicated and you needed to. But science books and history books and peer reviews and medical journals and the lion's share of all this research-related stuff was mostly out there somewhere. Often difficult to find, often difficult to get. And if you got it, it was hard to manage. They were like the cookies in the cookie jar. Right? They're up on the shelf. You can see them, but they're just out of reach. That's what information used to be like. So when somebody came along and said they were an authority on any given subject, we may have been kind of dubious, right? But if they said, well, they're credentialed, they're an author, they've got a PhD from Liberty University, we thought, well, all right, he must know his stuff. Anybody here play Scrabble? My dad and I used to play. Anybody remember back before smartphones and Google when you actually had to play with a hard dictionary sitting on the table? You had the book right there on the table, and somebody played a suspect word, and that sucker was open like that, and you found out. Anybody ever play without a dictionary? You played without one in the room? That's a great metaphor for how people used to accept that information, right? You're sitting across from someone, they play a word that you know is bogus, and it's a Z and a Q on a freaking triple, and you're like, yeah, right. No, it's a word. I know it's a word. I've used it. I know it's a word. I saw it just the other day. I know it's a word. And you have that argument. You don't have the reference material at hand. You end up, oh, fine. You play it. Go ahead. That's exactly what it used to be like. Even though it was an illegal move, you thought, well, I can't disprove it. I don't have the information right here. Pull that today, see what happens. I mean, we live in an era where you can play Scrabble in freaking outer space. That is a magnetic Scrabble board used in space. Imagine having the entire NASA engineer staff on your page if you ran into a, say, Scrabble question. They'd probably find the answer for you pretty quick. Today, our cell phones have more computing power. Our cell phones have more computing power than all of NASA used to send men to the moon in 1969. The Sony PlayStation today is more powerful than the multi-million-dollar military supercomputer of 1997. Our cameras need no film and store thousands of images. Our trains float on electromagnets at incredible speeds. When I started in video, we used to record on these big Beta SP tapes. Anybody with a video background knows what I'm talking about. Huge, cumbersome. And you're still shooting SD. You're still, it's uncompressed, but it's still standard def. 90 minutes of tape. Now you can fit hours of high-def video on that. An encyclopedia of knowledge used to be a long, heavy, cumbersome book. My parents had a big, long Encyclopedia Britannica, I think it was. It took up a whole bookshelf. And I think, didn't you have to renew them, update them every few years at the cost of, it was well over $1,000. They'd put you on a payment plan, right? And you'd update your encyclopedia. Now, your encyclopedia, it's a phone app. We can fit entire libraries on e-book readers. I just got one of these for Christmas about 1.5 years ago. I love it. I love it. You can fit libraries on a single book the size of a file folder. Presentations from our planet's greatest minds used to remain locked inside of universities and lecture halls, but now thanks to YouTube and services like it, the whole world is the lecture hall. We can all be in the audience, we can all attend. Information, education, answers, discussion, debate, documentation, soft theories, hard evidence are just a few keystrokes in just a few minutes, maybe even a few seconds away. Sure, there are different planes of knowledge and understanding, many of which are the domain of the expert. The career scientist, the PhD in, say, theoretical physics or whatever, sure. But those of us outside those areas of expertise are no longer excluded from the conversation. We have the opportunity to learn. We don't have an excuse for not doing our homework, for digging deeper, for checking the freaking facts and figures, which makes me crazy when I have to hear the constant assertions like this one. Albert Einstein was a Christian. You guys ever hear that one? No, it wasn't a Christian. He said it himself. It was, of course, a lie. What you read about my religious convictions, a lie which is being systematically repeated. I do not believe in a personal God, and I've never denied this, but have expressed it clearly. And actually, the quote goes on even longer. You should check it out in its context. It is really something. The Shroud of Turin could not have been a fake. Wrong. Scientists have recreated it using some of the same methods. They put it in an oven. You have to read it on CNN. It's pretty amazing. Besides, they freaking dated the thing. It places it over 1,000 years after the supposed death of Jesus Christ. By the way, for those who are interested, you can now use the shroud as a tasteful bedroom motif. Go to sleep in the arms of Jesus every night. Carbon dating doesn't work. Wrong. There's carbon dating right there. I mean, I'll spare you the carbon copulation slide, which I was thinking about bringing. Look, carbon dating works if you use it correctly. With a limit of 20,000 years, of course you can't use carbon dating on fossils. Kent Hovind. Fortunately, there are other reliable forms of dating you can use to pick up where carbon dating left off. Potholer on YouTube has a great video that is designed for the civilian, people like you and me who are not scientists, but seek to understand more about how carbon dating works and how to refute the arguments that are posited to us by the theist and deist community. There are no transitional fossils. Ever heard that one? Wrong. Not only have researchers found transitional fossils, they've discovered there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of them. I recommend the book. There's a guy named Dr. Donald Prothero. It's called Evolution, What the Fossils Say, Why It Matters. The Grand Canyon was created 4,000 years ago by Noah's flood. God, have you guys heard that one? Oh. Wrong. Take heart, believers. You're only wrong by hundreds of millions of years. Hundreds of millions of years. And if you reject the evidence of common ancestry found in our own genome, but you accept outright the story of a 600-year-old dude who built and captained a floating zoo before repopulating the entire planet with incest, your bullshit meter may need an adjustment. Here in the year freaking 2012, with all the information available to us, we are still having to refute the claims that are made that there's no evidence for evolution by natural selection. Now, do you remember the 2011 Miss USA pageant? I had to bring a couple of still frames from the responses. They sat all the contestants down and they asked them, do you believe evolution should be taught in schools? Miss Alabama said, evolution, no, I do not believe in evolution. I do not think it should be taught in schools, and I would not encourage it. Miss Oregon said, I think that every theory of how we came to be here should get a shout out in the education. Miss Virginia said, I think little bits and pieces of evolution should be taught in schools because it's a theory, and after all, we need to know about different theories so we can figure out what we want to believe is true. Finally, Miss Indiana said, I don't know, I think we should leave that up to the government. These answers were ripe for parody. There's a brilliant one I found on YouTube. I got permission from the video's producer, Mackenzie Fagan, to show this 2-minute clip. It's a clever send-up of the Miss USA Evolution video. It draws a bright, brilliant circle around the insanity of removing evidence-based studies from our classrooms.
Math? No. I do not believe in math, and I don't think we should encourage it.
Oh, okay, this is a really hard one. There are really two sides to this story. On the one hand, you have math, and then on the other hand, you have like non-math.
All 7-year-olds should have the right to decide for themselves if math is scientific fact.
Math is a theory, and it's not at all what the Bible tells us.
We live in America, not Russia.
Just a little bit. Add it. Not times.
I think that people should try to be as knowledgeable as they can. I think they need to get learned so that, they can make a choice about all of the world things.
Children have the right to learn anything they want to learn. Alchemy, Scientology, gymnastics,
I really don't know what the square root of 16 is. No one does.
aliens, how to just make basic mixed drinks.
Yes, it's math. I'm sorry, is this a joke?
Creationism, whatever those Heaven's Gate people believed. Oh, and math.
There are numbers everywhere. On phones, on houses, on microwaves.
Numbers are great, but they should also learn colors, smells, vibrations.
Math should just be left out of the equation. Not the equation like in a math sense, just like, equation. So, because I don't believe in math.
Not to women.
I guess if other people want to learn math, they should be able to. But then they'll be the type of people who know math.
Did she do a great job on that thing? I mean, really good. Francis Collins, an evangelical Christian, founder of the Human Genome Project, himself has admitted evolution must be true. One of the captains on the theist team has just admitted Darwin's playbook is the one that works. I used this slide last year in my speech at FreeOK2. Collins' 2006 bestseller, The Language of God, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief, reported scientific indications that anatomically modern humans emerged from primate ancestors perhaps 100,000 years ago, long before the apparent Genesis time frame, and originated with a population that numbered something like 10,000, not 2 individuals. What are the implications of what he just said? No Adam and Eve, no original sin, no reason for any of the other stories that foundation provides to exist. The Great Flood, no need for it. Christ's sacrifice on the cross, no need for it. Jesus is coming again to take us to heaven. Adam and Eve, he literally refuted his own holy book. But still, we have to refute time and time again our arguments against evolution for intelligent design. Arguments that our modern scientific methods are not reliable, but a 2,000-year-old anonymously written book is reliable. It's exhausting. Anybody else feeling that lately? I have been just exhausted. Tired, repetitive, unoriginal, old, hackneyed arguments. They're like the old, original, unoriginal songs we used to hear on the radio, day after day, hour after hour, week after week, until we beg them, please, would you just play something else? Please. But all right, just for a second. And I realize we're in a room full of skeptics, but you and I are going to speak for this occasion, just rhetorically, to the religious who have come to us and play this particular playlist one more time. Dear Christian, it does not take more faith to be an atheist, because an evidence-based approach to living does not regard intuition, assumption, gut feelings, goosebumps, hairs on the back of your neck, dreams, visions, premonitions, voices, or wish thinking to be a credible method for determining what is true. There is no context of Scripture in which stories about talking donkeys, 900-year-old humans, curses, levitation, flying chariots of fire, floating zoos, demon pigs, and supermen who gain strength from the length of their hair are anything but ridiculous. No context could possibly justify Yahweh's endorsement of slavery, torture, infanticide, kidnapping, rape, and human sacrifice. If you take a fire insurance position, the Pascal's wager position, and say you want to believe in God just in case, think about what you just said. You either don't really believe and you don't think God can tell the difference, which makes him clueless and not at all omniscient. The eye has clearly evolved, and the various stages of evolved eyes can be observed even from today. From the earliest stages featuring photosensitive cells to the pinhole eye of the nautilus to the complex eye of the krill, Charles Darwin himself spent pages discussing how the eye could evolve. There are two terrific short videos that help to explain this, again, to lay people like ourselves who don't really operate on the higher tiers of scientific education. We simply are learning as best we can in our own language. And there's a couple of videos I really, really like. Sir David Attenborough's got one called The Evolution of the Eye, and the same name of one from Richard Dawkins. I think he actually did one in the 70s and did an update of it 3 decades later. If you think there are no atheists in foxholes, you must not know the story of one of the most famous in history, American history. Now, I'm not parading his photo out in an attempt to capitalize on his tragic death. I'll tell you, I get emails and podcast calls from people who are stationed across the planet in military services well outside of those of the United States even, who serve their nations proudly and who are absolute atheists. For the record, the New Testament does not invalidate the Old Testament. It affirms it. Do not think I've come to abolish the law of the prophets. I've not come to abolish, but to fulfill them. That's Jesus Christ speaking. Luke 16:17, it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for the smallest part of the letter of the law to become invalid. Besides, if the Old Testament is no longer relevant, and the Bible is God's instruction book for living, right? Why doesn't he update the damn thing and release Bible 2.0? And yet, God's instruction to us is the world's greatest game of Where's Waldo? Please, theists and Christians, please stop using the word theory in an intellectually dishonest way. Anybody else sick of this? It's just a theory. Scientific theories are not merely wild tales randomly plucked from the ass. They are scientifically accepted general principles supported by evidence and observed facts. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a theory in this context as a scheme or system of ideas or statements held as an explanation or account of a group of facts or phenomena, a hypothesis that has been confirmed or established by observation or experiment and is propounded or accepted as accounting for the known facts. A statement of what are held to be the general laws, principles, or causes of something known or observed. For your information, all belief systems do not deserve respect. Please. Your worldview does not deserve respect just because you hold it. Besides, ask yourself if you afford that same respect to someone of a different belief. Do Christians largely respect the belief of Mormons? Do Mormons respect the Muslim faith? Do Muslims respect the Catholic faith? Most religious people don't want all belief systems respected. They want their belief system respected. By the way, we atheists really think it's cute when Christians stand firmly on the story of a deity that impregnated a teenage girl so he could give birth to and then kill himself to rescue billions from the eternal torture that he created, and then look over at the Joseph Smith story and go, that's so dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I take a harder line when it comes to my former faith. Anybody familiar with my work and my page knows I poke a lot of fun at Jesus Christ and the Bible. And I take a lot of heat for it. But I'll tell you, personally, I not only think mockery of religious doctrine is appropriate, I think it's necessary. In some instances, it's necessary. Look, from my earliest ages, it was Jesus is in the sky, this invisible eye in the sky who died for your sins 2,000 years ago. There is a heaven, there is a hell, and you don't want to go to hell, do you? I got on my knees and said the salvation prayer, and I read the scriptures, and I was in Christian school from 4th grade through my senior year. I was a spokesperson for Youth for Christ. I was programmed to anticipate heaven and fear hell. And the idea of Jesus Christ controlled my life. The superstition that used to control me, to limit me, to frighten me, to stifle me, it's now a punchline to me. It's the monster in the closet. It used to scare me, but not anymore. Not anymore. I am liberated from those chains. That is why you'll sometimes see me post irreverent stuff like this, the virginal. Isn't that fun? Or this one, Pope by day, Sith Lord by night. Here's another Catholic miracle. It's the nun bun. That could not have happened by itself. That's a miracle. There's the Jehovah's Witness door knocker. But nothing can keep them from knocking on your door. Everybody smile for the picture. I did this, the Muslim family photo. There's the Little Smoky's nativity set. Really popular around Christmas. Bacon and sausage in there. There's the Stig from Top Gear in the manger. I guess they took some serious heat over this particular episode of the show. I saw it and I was like, wow, that's brilliant. Here's the Last Stripper. I took a lot of heat over posting this. And then there's Disco Jesus, who died for your spins. Now, I did this one. It's a video I produced in December of 2010. It was a retelling of the Jesus story. But this time, and he's so pissed off that they betrayed him and crucified him, and he came back and went Steven Seagal on everybody. So in the video, and he's actually, this is actually a more credible version of the story. And at the end, of course, everybody says, Jesus Christ. You know? My favorite part of the video was at the end, we had the disclaimer, we had the rated R, but still less violent than the actual Bible. Which is really true. There's Jesus reading The God Delusion. I always thought that was a great photo. And one of my favorites, racing Jesus in a speedboat. Don't bother, the fucker will just get out and run. Why do you mock, Seth? Why do you mock? This is my faith you're talking about. And I have to understand that when I mock Jesus Christ and whatever, when I mock the faith, it's not about them. At this moment, it's really about me. Taking what used to scare me, to control me, to stifle me, and to say, you are powerless. I know it's a fantasy. I choose to live in reality and to be able to just treat it like what it is. It's just a story. Was there a Jesus that really exists? Hell if I know. I don't know. Quite frankly, though, the Bible is completely useless as a cohesive, comprehensive historical document. And I've simply decided I'm moving forward. Please don't tell me that you discovered Noah's Ark, and when you do, Google the difference between Noah's Ark and a geologic structure that happens to be shaped like a boat. How long has this picture been floating around? America was not founded as a Christian nation. This was a huge surprise to me. In God We Trust wasn't even added to our money until a religious resurgence after the Civil War. That was in 1863. It wasn't added to paper money till 1957. Founding fathers didn't do that. It wasn't even part of our Pledge of Allegiance until 1954. The original Pledge of Allegiance doesn't have "under God" in it. I know I'm not telling this crowd anything, right? You guys know that. And in fact, if you're like me, I was at a city council meeting. We've been doing some stuff here locally, and they stood and they said the Pledge of Allegiance, and I found myself stopping and saying nothing during the Under God segment, because that's not really part of the Pledge of Allegiance. President John Adams himself said at the Treaty of Tripoli, the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Adolf Hitler was not an atheist. And he didn't practice evolution, he practiced eugenics. He banned Darwin's books. And in fact, not just Darwin, but all writings that ridicule, belittle, or besmirch the Christian religion and its institution, faith in God. He had ties to the Catholic Church and mentioned God in his book, Mein Kampf. I believe today that my conduct is in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. Charles Darwin never had a deathbed conversion. His own children said, absolutely not. My father's agnostic point of view is given in my Life and Letters of Charles Darwin. That's his freaking child who said that. Your personal experience is not a personal proof of an encounter with God. Eyewitness testimony is so unreliable in criminal court cases. That's why what people think they see and what they actually saw are often two different things. There's a book by Levin and Kramer called Problems and Materials on Trial Advocacy. It says, eyewitness testimony is at best evidence of what the witness believes to have occurred. It may or may not tell what actually happened. The familiar problems of perception, of gauging time, speed, height, weight, of accurate identification of persons accused of crime all contribute to making honest testimony something less than completely credible. I saw it, I experienced it, I felt it is not a credible argument. I'm sorry. That's not enough. Your spiritual experience has been replicated in the lab using something called the God helmet. You guys ever follow this? Works in a small number of people, but they use magnets to help replicate the God experience. Don't keep a straight face and tell me that the velociraptor hung out in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Don't tell me an all-powerful, omnipotent God needs to wait a while before he defeats the devil when he could have done it before the world began. Don't tell me it's righteous to create imperfect humans and threaten them with condemnation over their imperfection. Don't tell me that any God who was just could ever consider roasting people alive forever and ever and ever. You say atheists are all immoral, pathetic, sad, rudderless people. You must be talking about people like Marie Curie, known as the mother of modern physics. How about legendary author and scientist Isaac Asimov? How about a contemporary director of some very popular films? In my opinion, the guy's a genius, a hit and miss genius, but a genius. Or a Nobel Prize winner, one of the world's greatest champions for women's rights. How about the guy who wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn? Or the Mythbusters? Or the good people in this very room? Yes, you're all sad, pathetic, rudderless degenerates. You want to talk about goodness? How about the work of so many charities and human rights organizations that provide benefit without the religious construct? Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders, the Foundation Beyond Belief, the American Red Cross. No deity required when the thinking atheist community, the online community, got together this April to raise over $30,000 for charity. A genuine act of humanity and goodness, 100% deity free. Now, I asked Natalie if I should show this photo, and I think she knows my heart, and I hope you will as well. I'm not trying to show this off for that reason. But after we raised $30,000 for charity, it was 15 for charity water and 15 for responsible charity. Hemley sent me this. He had printed photographs of me from the Thinking Atheist, and all of the people who got water filters and received benefit were given photographs of me, and they tacked them up in their houses or huts or shacks or wherever. And when he sent it to me, I almost started sobbing like a child. It was so moving, so touching. Stop telling non-believers that they're egotistical when you're the ones who believe billions of galaxies exist so that you can be handpicked by an omnipotent king to go on a divine mission to receive eternal reward. God made the universe with you in mind, and we're the cocky ones? Now more than ever, more than I was a believer, I look up and around the universe and I just feel this sense of awe. Awe.
I'm alive at a time of fantastic invention and discovery. We live in a time where every day millions of people transport themselves to faraway destinations via flying machines, miles over our heads, traveling hundreds of times faster than a human being can walk. We predict weather days in advance using mechanical eyes that humans placed into orbit around the Earth. Using TV remotes, our power tools, our telephones, they have no cords, completely wireless. We can emulate an entire orchestra with one instrument. We cook our meals with one touch. We put microchips in our pets, so if they get lost, we can track them by satellite. We prevent pregnancy with one pill. We pay our bills with one click. We experience our motion pictures in 3 dimensions. We are creating synthetic cells in our labs. We're touching the bottom of the deepest oceans. We are playing Scrabble on the space station. Instead of clutching onto the ham-handed explanations, the doctrines and solutions and instructions of those who were essentially just feeling their way in the dark, it's time to realize and embrace the privilege of being alive right now. To see in action the microscope, the telescope, the video camera, the vaccine, the computer, the laser, the X-ray, the spacecraft, and so much more. And we must, because the real world is so much better. Now, the last argument I want to address tonight before I show you my video is a claim that you can't have a meaningful life without a belief in God. I'm sure you've heard this. What's the use for living? You don't believe in Jesus or God or Allah or whatever, why bother going on? You have no purpose to be here, you're just going to rot in the ground. Drives me crazy. If there's no God, what is there to live for? This young man named Alex Nunn, he was a user of the Thinking Atheist Facebook page in 2011. And I wrote about him in a blog, which you can find on my main website, thethinkingatheist.com. Now, I didn't know Alex personally. I only became aware of his story after getting a letter from his mom. She knew that he frequently posted on my Facebook page, and he was part of the Thinking Atheist community. Alex's community was religious, Baptist, Catholics mostly. His family was at least passively religious. I think they were kind of burned by the church, or at least didn't like all the hypocrisy, and they sort of checked out of formal religion, but they still believed in God. Alex was not ostracized for his non-belief, and his family remained really close. Despite disagreements, they were pretty tight. On the morning of November 4th, 2011, Alex Robert Nunn was behind the wheel of his highly modified Dodge Neon SRT4 when he apparently lost control of the vehicle. The car slid off the road, the left shoulder of Route 69. It flipped over and collided with trees. The crash was fatal. I still don't really know why his mom reached out to me. I mean, she's still essentially a believer. I run an atheist website and YouTube page and Facebook page. But she did. And after I wrote about his life and his death for the website, because I wanted to memorialize this, she thanked me for the tribute and for honoring her son. She spoke about the grief and the difficulties of coping with the loss of a child, which I can't even imagine. And she was genuinely thankful for the online community that supported her son and was such a positive force in his life. Now, was Alex Nunn's life not valuable because he did not believe in a God? Was his death not a reminder to us all how fragile and precious this existence is? Was it part of a divine plan which pertains to believers and non-believers alike? Was it a lack of protection from God because he was an atheist? Was it punishment? Did it have some other spiritual or supernatural connotation? So often spoken about by the preachers and teachers who preside at the funerals of our loved ones. Or was Alex one of the people who just got it? Living his non-religious life with enthusiasm, humor, joy, and dedication to the things he was passionate about. He seized the day, maximized each moment. No deity required. Now, I asked Alex's mom to write a letter to the people in this room, and I brought it with me here. She was happy to share her thoughts. And these words are hers. Her name is Lane. She said, Alexander Nunn was my oldest son, a computer programmer who was a gentle person, an observer of life, very logical thinking, and a questioner of anything that did not make sense to him. In his almost 30 years of life, he loved to debate, tease, and prod people to think about what was taken for granted as true. He made me uncomfortable at times, but I was proud that he'd become a free thinker, which had been our goal as parents. When the subject matter got intense and emotions high, he would just laugh his quirky laugh and move on, leaving at least me with renewed questioning of what I believed and held true to help me strengthen my convictions or consider new ideas. He was a good teacher to his mother and probably never realized it. Alex's death in a car accident shook me to the core. A beautiful morning, a long stretch of highway, driving the car he'd modified and was so proud of, slip off the road and he was gone. The pain of losing a child has been compared to a mortal wound that you don't die from, and I believe this is a very good description. The grief has been overwhelming at times, and especially hard when you do not cling to standard religious beliefs for comfort. We gave our son a mixed belief funeral. A Catholic friend led a prayer, then a Baptist friend. My sister read posts from a debate on atheism her and Alex had discussed not long before his death, with a beautiful quote from him on how the sun rising is just a theory until it does. We ended his funeral with a recording being played of Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. It was so Alex. We never know how long we have on this earth, so our time here should be precious to us all. Looking back, Alex led a full life filled with enjoying his family, exploring things he was curious about, doing what he wanted to do when he had a chance. At his funeral, many people talked about how easygoing he was and how he didn't seem to let issues or disagreements get in his way of happiness. It was like he knew there was more important things to spend his time on. Was this just one more lesson he unknowingly was teaching me? Life, no matter the actual length, is short in time. There is never enough. Choose wisely how you spend it. She closes by saying, I don't have the answers yet on what I believe now. His death has made me examine my beliefs even more, which in my heart I know is good because it will eventually lead me to a better person like him. I love you, my son, and I thank you for teaching me to question and think for myself. Of all the questions and challenges I hear from the religious, one of the big ones is the assertion that to be worth anything here, we must dedicate each earthly moment in anticipation of heaven and the avoidance of hell. This life is just the warm-up. The real thing won't begin till we're dead, so you better watch out. Say the right prayer, take the right path, do the right deed, spread the right message, because judgment's coming. Forever's in the balance, and you don't want to get this one wrong. Living this way is not about life, it's all about the afterlife. For that reason, I wanted to produce a video. I decided last year I wanted to put together a piece. And if possible, Caleb, I'm going to have you help me start this next piece. But I wanted to collaborate with some friends, I thought, who could perhaps articulate in their own way their own thoughts, feelings, experiences on this life and the concept of an afterlife, to address the very difficult issues of life and of death. And with your permission, it runs about 9 minutes. But with your permission, I'd like to show you that video tonight. It's called Afterlife.
If you spent a lovely day at the beach and then returned the following weekend knowing that it had one fewer grain of sand, would it seem like a different beach? So too would the universe continue in its ways if humanity weren't here to witness it.
The universe is absolutely massive, and we are virtually insignificant in it.
I've seen no evidence that the rest of the universe cares we exist or is even capable of caring. but I don't really need validation from the rest of the universe to find my own life important.
Why are you, and why was I, willing to sacrifice my humanity, sacrifice the sum total of human experience and interaction, the sum total of human knowledge, on the altar of a dream?
On occasion had people tell me that my life must be so depressing because I'm an atheist. It's doom and gloom, and once you die, it's all over. And it's just absurd to me how many people live for dying in this weird way.
I think fragile, fearful humans were terrified of death, and so they wrote their own ending to the story. This happy fantasy, a place where they'll be reunited with people they've lost, they'll experience constant joy, and of course, they'll never, ever die.
To me, living for the afterlife, thoughtlessly following a set of what not to do rules which you cannot question, that's basically devaluing your life in favor of worshipping death.
And apart from the lack of evidence of a heaven or hell, there is another problem that the concept of an afterlife has. It is to diminish the value that we place on our lives in the here and now.
An unlimited supply of anything, including life, means that its existence cannot be appreciated. If life is eternal, then there should be no sense of urgency.
The worst aspect of Western monotheism is their system of judgment, wherein it doesn't matter how good or bad you were in life. You won't be judged according to your deeds the way you should be. It doesn't matter what an evil, selfish, sadistic, bigoted victimizer you were in life. All sins can be forgiven if you but believe.
I do not fear being dead, but the concept of the alternatives offered by the religious do trouble me. Consider the more palatable alternative of the two, heaven as opposed to hell. Whilst descriptions of heaven are as diverse as those who believe in heaven, there does appear to be one constant. It will last for eternity. Imagine that. Imagine eternity.
Given eternity, everything that can be accomplished will be accomplished. Beyond all achievements, there would be only limitless, pointless existence.
The first 100 years may be passable. The first 1,000 more painful. The first 10,000 insufferable. But this is just the start. An eternity in heaven would be hell for me.
When I think about my own death, I used to feel scared, but I don't think I do anymore.
I'm not afraid of being dead. After we die, we will not know the truth at that point. We will not know, wish, think, remember, dream, anything.
When we look at what a human being is, what their identity is, that I am this collection of my memories, my hopes, my dreams, my desires, my consciousness exists as a product of the brain that is in this body. That ends at death.
I don't find this sad or tragic either. I don't really welcome death, but I don't live in fear of the end. And I've come to see it as just another part of the natural world.
And to borrow from Mark Twain, I have been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it.
In some respects, we never die. Our lives are entangled with those who come after us, just as our lives are entangled with those who came before us. I mean, there is scarcely a living soul on this planet that doesn't go to bed at night without their lives in some way being affected by the work of the hands and minds of folks like Faraday, Newton, and Pasteur. But these entanglements go way beyond the vulgarly obvious main routes, for similarly, almost everyone's life is intertwined with the people who grew the grain and made the bread that these men ate. So it becomes clear that death is not the end. We are intertwined with both lesser and greater themes.
Just because there is no grand scheme that it plays into doesn't mean that there's not something beautiful about what's going on here.
Ironically enough, the only part of me that is, for all intents and purposes, immortal is my material body. Because after I die, and after our sun dies, and after the planetary nebula it leaves behind fades away, every atom of me will be recycled back into the universe, ultimately becoming part of other planets and stars. We are all originally stardust, literally, and we will be stardust again and forever.
Even though a cell might not last forever, the role it played in the life of the larger organism was important, and that is how I see myself, as a part of something bigger.
I have everything to live for. I don't want people to mourn over my death. If anything, I want them to celebrate my life, to celebrate what I have accomplished.
I, for one, think that your life becomes more meaningful when your beliefs are based in reality. Knowing that this life is the only one I have makes me a lot more conscious of my actions. Makes me want to do something with this short life I have. Make some improvement in the world, however small it may be.
There's too much to learn, there's too much to see, there's too much to know, there's too much to experience. I'm not just going to exist. I'm going to live.
For the beauty that cannot be seen, for the honor of those whose shoulders we stand on, for the hope of those we aspire to become, and for the inspiration of those who will surpass our achievements.
Life is a precious, brief, fragile, amazing thing. And instead of being so fixated on living after death, I want to truly live before it. And be thankful that against incredible odds, I was able to witness this particular part of the universe with my own eyes, firsthand.